The Log. I'm Charles Purcell. We come to the end of another exciting week for everybody. This is our Friday show. That means it's going out to all the platforms. So for you subscribers, just a reminder, if you want to hear the Monday through Thursday shows, the Daily Show, just go to the website, charlespurcell.com. All right. Well, okay. We've got to talk about these protests. That was really sort of the big story this week, I guess. Always a lot going on, but that one really got the headlines. It had the most interesting pictures. But for my money, it also has kind of the most interesting stories as well. Now, I don't want to fall into the trap here of giving them more due than they're worth. A lot of the media, let me say right off the bat, is falling into that trap. Because, they make such great video for the nightly news. They get lots of attention. But there's more reason to pay some attention to these folks. First the good news. Just in case you're not aware of this, the numbers are astronomically against them. They are a tiny sliver. According to various polls, let's see. Let's look at this one. This is a majority of Americans support stay-at-home orders. I'm looking at MSNBC right now. In favor of closing bars and restaurants, 76% to 12 favor. Postponing non-essential medical care, 68 to 18. Requiring, what is that? The stay-at-home orders, 80% to 11% in favor. Limit gatherings to 10 or fewer, 82% to 9. April 16th through the 20th, that was taken. It's an AP poll. Close to home here in Milwaukee, I'm broadcasting from River West, the greatest neighborhood in the world. The Marquette poll, the most recent one, found even bigger numbers. If I'm remembering right, I'm looking it up right now. 86, I think, was the percentage. 86% of those polled were in favor of the restrictions, the stay at home. To, I think, 10 or 11% opposed. So these are very small numbers. And, take heart. But don't take solace in that. The Tea Party started with numbers like that. To this day, we have numbers that lopsided on issues that we can't get past. Things like, the most obvious one comes to mind, universal background checks for gun purchases. There you get like 86 to 10, 90 to 10, 93%. It's nearly unanimous. They're the highest numbers you're going to see of any issue polled, and we can't get that passed. So, that little tiny number, laugh them off at your own risk, because those tiny numbers of people in their little flak jackets and carrying their AR-15s and waving their Confederate flags, they got way more. They got an outsized power when it comes to Congress and state legislatures. So we got to take these people very, very seriously. And when I spoke with you last week, we'd only seen the first one in Michigan. And then I think that Friday we spoke, there was a couple more. Wisconsin had theirs, I think it was the Saturday after we spoke, right? The picture that went viral was, of course, the woman who says, "I want a haircut." Oh, man. But we can't laugh them off as much as I'd love to. I'd love to just make jokes and laugh them off. But they're real. They're tiny and they're real. They're tiny and they're dangerous, like a mosquito with malaria. Oh, speaking of Wisconsin, as we speak here, they're going to see if they could do this again. They're trying for a big one in Madison. It's the one that's getting most of the attention. Protesters vow to rally against Wisconsin's safer-at-home order without permit. Permit denied because gathering would be in violation of order barring gatherings. That's, again, from the AP yesterday, I guess, day before. Organizers of a rally against Wisconsin's stay-at-home order say they're proceeding with the Friday event even though their permit to hold it on the grounds of the state capitol has been denied. The planned rally is the latest in a string of events in Wisconsin and elsewhere organized by opponents of orders designed to limit the spread of the coronavirus. Organizer Madison Elmer said she learned this week the permit was denied because the gathering would be in violation of the current order barring gatherings of any size. Elmer pledged Wednesday to forge ahead with the protest. I guess there's a certain amount of irony to that, right? We're protesting a law that limits our gatherings, so we have to gather to protest it. Oh, but we can't get the permit because we can't gather. We've got a little who's on first going there. And this isn't just Karen and Buffy and Chad and Elmer. This is not just a couple militia buddies and their blonde frost-tip wives getting together over the barbecue and planning these things. There's an agenda out there. In that 86-10 margin, within the 10, you got some very powerful people. We've heard from office holders. We've heard from infamously from Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. "There are more important things than living," was the quote that everybody heard. Ron Johnson was right at the forefront of this a few weeks ago now, when he talked about acceptable number of deaths into the millions to protect the American way. Dying for the American way. Getting back to business. Of course, that's a long-held belief, right? That's always been lauded, by all parts of the spectrum. We've always honored people who died to protect our way of life. Well, now, maybe I'm not the one who should be talking right now, but I never thought that was a real good idea. I wasn't around in World War II. I keep hearing that was the good war. I'm going to take their word for it. I don't know. I wasn't here. But by my reading of history and by my watching of the news for the last several decades of my life, I haven't quite seen that. If anybody thinks that soldiers died in Vietnam or Korea or Afghanistan or Iraq for our way of life, well, then you just, to use my favorite word from Malcolm X, you just been bamboozled. But that's the language they're pulling out again. So, Lieutenant Governor of Texas, Dan Patrick, "There are more important things than living." It's not really that outrageous. I bet you've said something very similar when it comes to fighting a war. And they're just sort of equating this. And this is their logic. They wrap themselves up in the flag, and they say the most important thing is to uphold the American way of life. All the things we've fought for. The American dream. Freedom, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. And the safe-at-home orders are screwing that all up. We can't live the American dream if we're hiding in our houses. Well, no, that's right, we can't. But that's the dichotomy they set up. Okay, some people are going to have to sacrifice, just like those good old doughboys in World War I and the good old fighting Yanks in World War II. Thank you for your service. You died for our country. You died for the American way of life. That's the same line of thinking they're having. And they're all wrapped up in the flag, and they're perfectly comfortable saying it right out loud. And damned if it isn't working for this small amount of people. But I repeat, a very dangerous sliver. You got a little sliver in your finger? Yeah, it hurts. You just pull it out. But, oh no, it's deep in there. I can't get it out. Oh, now it's infected. Oh, hell, now I'm dead. You know, slivers can be dangerous. And we got a 10% sliver of the population who've got themselves wrapped up in the flag. They are suckers to the big organizers, the people who really want them out there. The owners, the capitalists, the banks, they're the ones who really want them out there. And they have their own reasons too, but they're just too dumb to realize that they're working against their own interests. I said last week, or I forget when I said it, the one thing I have in common with these people, the one thing, some of them are genuinely worried. Like, I got to go back to work. How am I going to feed my family? I'm completely with you on that. But if that's what you're worried about, you're fighting the wrong battle, man. You got to get on my side. You got to get with the lefties. If they're going to close us down, which I think they should for health reasons, in which every scientist and researcher in the country says it, that's the only reason I say it. I have no opinion here. I only listen to experts. So if we have to shut down, well, then they better well damn pay our bills. Every other advanced country in the world has figured out how to do that. They're freezing rents and freezing mortgages and handing out a UBI for the duration. Everybody else can do it. So there's your fight. Come on, we got some common ground here. Let's fight together. Put down your gun and your little racist flag. I don't know what you're thinking. Oh, but it just, it fits their MO. It fits their the idea of America that they've got just so entrenched. And the people cheering them on and enabling them, now we're getting into people with real power. We're getting into state legislatures, governors. The most recent angle on this story, and I'm embarrassed to say it didn't occur to me, but of course, I mean, once I saw these stories popping up, starting just yesterday, they're pretty obvious. Cleo Chang writes on Vice, GOP governors will push workers off unemployment by reopening early. So this is why they want to reopen. The Department of Labor confirmed to Vice that workers who refuse to return to work out of a general fear for their safety will lose their CARES Act unemployment benefits. CARES was the first big rollout, and that's what included unemployment benefits. Republican governors in states like Georgia, Tennessee, and South Carolina have announced plans to begin reopening their states' economies despite warnings by health officials that it's too early to do so. The decisions mean that businesses may soon start calling people back into work before they feel safe, creating a coronavirus-specific dilemma. If people in those states are offered their jobs back but refuse to take them out of fear for their safety, they will likely no longer qualify for unemployment benefits, even though they're taking the same precautions as people one state over. The Department of Labor's website explicitly states that voluntarily deciding to quit your job out of a general concern about exposure to COVID-19 does not make you eligible for pandemic unemployment assistance. A Department of Labor spokesperson confirmed to Vice that employees cannot continue to collect pandemic unemployment insurance if they refuse to return to work out of general safety concerns. They also noted that when an individual is no longer eligible, they are also no longer eligible for the additional $600 in benefits. That's the extra $600 on top of the state unemployment that we can thank Bernie for, and that I'm still trying to get myself. I'm working on it. So, right, okay, so now you lose that benefit, and you're forced to make a decision. All right. I know it's not safe. Every health expert in the world is telling me it's not safe. Not only is it not safe for me, but I'm making things more dangerous for the rest of my community. Because we got to remember that's what it's about. When you're keeping your social distance, when you're staying at home, when you're wearing your mask, you're not just protecting yourself, you're protecting other people. Because I feel like things have to be repeated over and over again, because with each 24-hour news cycle, we have to find new angles, and it pushes out the old information we had. So I feel like we have to keep repeating a few things. You might very well have the virus right now as we speak. I might have it. Anybody can have it. You can be an asymptomatic carrier. I know this is old news, but I fear that we're forgetting really basic stuff about this. So at the risk of like, okay, yeah, Charles Purcell, I got it. Shut up. But I really feel like this needs to be repeated. Any one of us, me, you, right now in this minute, might be an asymptomatic carrier. We don't know. And that's why we're staying at home. And that's why we're wearing the mask if we have to go out. And that's why we're keeping a strict social distance. 6 feet was never enough for me. I like 10. I like 20. I get as far away from people as I can. So if these GOP governors are successful, and they already are, they're going back, partially they're going back today in Georgia. It starts today. A limited open up in Georgia. Governor Kemp. And yes, exactly. People will be faced with that choice. I either go out and risk my own health and risk the health of my loved ones and neighbors and coworkers and community, or I stay home, which means basically I'm quitting my job. I have zero income and zero benefits because I quit my job. That's a hell of a choice right there. That is a hell of a choice. Right here in Wisconsin, in my beloved Wisconsin, GOP lawmakers asked Supreme Court to block Tony Evers' order to stay home. The same court they went to force Wisconsinites to go out and vote in the middle of a pandemic. I'm sure you've heard the news by now. There are 7 confirmed, but probably many more cases that are directly tied to that election. Let's see. Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. Republican leaders of the state legislature took Democratic Governor Tony Evers to court Tuesday to stop his administration from keeping businesses and schools closed through May in an effort to slow the spread of a deadly coronavirus. The move escalates the partisan war between the Republicans who control the legislature and the Democratic governor that began before Evers took office. This time, the two sides battle over whether shutting down the state to save lives is worth the devastating economic toll. The GOP leaders are seeking to take away Department of Health Services Secretary Andrea Palm's ability to make unilateral decisions during public health emergencies and instead require her to gain the approval before taking action. They say the Evers administration's actions are outside the bounds of the law. I just heard a Marquette law professor interviewed, I think it was just, let me see, I guess that was on Wednesday night, I heard, on the local NPR station here. He said, oh yeah, it's right there in the statutes, section 252, I think he cited. But yeah, they're taking it to the court, and the court still has a conservative majority. Interesting thing about our Wisconsin state Republicans here. Just on Wednesday, they announced that the state Republicans announced plans to delay their state convention by 2 months. So they're working virtually, they're working by Zoom, and they're postponing their convention for 2 months. Let's see, the event originally set to take place in mid-May will now begin on July 10th. Party leaders say the extra time will allow them to better plan the event. What? The convention was scheduled to be held in Wisconsin Dells. The move comes one day after Republican leaders in Madison announced a legal challenge to an extension of Governor Tony Evers' safer-at-home order that was filed in the state Supreme Court. So within a day of taking Evers to court to force people back out into the workplace and kids back into schools, let's change our convention to from mid-May to July 10th. You can't make this stuff up. If you did, nobody would believe you. If you took this into a Hollywood producer, they go, no, nobody's this evil. We like evil villains, but that's impossible. Oh, man. And I alluded to this earlier. The media has to be really careful about how they cover this stuff. They cannot do the both sides thing that they're so guilty of all the time. Well, one side thinks we should reopen, and the other side thinks we should stay at home. No, it's 86% to 10%. That's not a both sides issue. You better make that really, really clear in your reporting. Yes, report on this 10%. Here's what they're doing. Here's why we think they're doing it. They are 10% of the opinion in this country and in this state. Nobody else wants this. They're a tiny minority. Here they are yelling. Here's the dangerous mosquito. Watch out. It's carrying malaria. Probably bad to use one awful disease as a metaphor here as we're talking about coronavirus. Give me some time. I'll think of a better metaphor. But yeah, they're tiny and they're dangerous. I mentioned universal background checks less than 10% of Americans oppose universal background checks. Do we have them? No. No, we don't. Similar numbers for things like net neutrality, which is always in danger and has been damaged over the years. Protecting the dreamers, there's another one. It gets into the 80s, percentage-wise, of people who want to protect dreamers. Have we got that? No, we don't. The numbers are through the roof on protecting Social Security. And that's always just hanging by a thread. A couple of more votes here and there, and that's going to fall off the cliff. So yeah, these tiny numbers have such power. So media, yes, pay attention to them. But please be mindful about how you talk about them, about how you cover them. Don't give me the both sides. Don't be fair. Oh, well, one side says this and one side says that. One side says A and one side says B. Well, as an objective reporter, I guess I don't know what's, don't play that little game. So we got the 86-10. I'm using that number from the Marquette poll. And within that 10%, we got these governors and legislators who just don't seem to care. Yeah, people are going to die. They say it right out loud. Okay, whatever. People are going to die. I don't care. It's the American way. Consumption is more important. And the people who pay my bills, my only real constituents, are my campaign donors, et cetera, et cetera. You know how that whole world works. My corporate buddies. Well, they need their workers back on the line. Of course, the owners, they're all safe at home. They're not going anywhere, just like the Wisconsin state legislators aren't going anywhere. All the elites are safe at home, but we got to get those workers back out into the restaurants, into the bars, into the, Let's AstroTurf a bunch of dummies to come and protest, get some media hype, wrap them up in flags, and then, yeah, it's a win-win, the governor says, because now I don't have to pay unemployment. Just open up the business, boom, unemployment's gone. Just tell your workers to come back. If they don't, well, that's their decision. So that's the scenario. But we have one more. We have one more player in this. And this is the most disturbing of them all. If the guys I've described aren't evil enough for you, we got the really evil guys. Now, if you're not aware of this angle of the story, we got the really evil guys. For these guys, it's not, I don't care if you die. It's, I want you to die. This is the Charlottesville crowd. This is the we will not be replaced crowd. This is the Confederate flag-waving, AR-15 carrying crowd. We saw lots of signs from the protests, and one of the most vile was, sacrifice the weak. Open Tennessee. Sacrifice the weak. I'm going to read a little bit of this to you. It's from Minnesota Public Radio News. Catherine Reichert from earlier this week. Behind rallies to reopen the economy, a Minnesota activist and his family. Last week, as cars and people filled the streets in front of the governor's residence, demanding an end to restrictions meant to fight COVID-19, a live video of the protest appeared on the group Minnesota Gun Rights Facebook page. Amid the honking cars and chants of USA, USA, the group's leader, Ben Dorr, took credit for helping draw supporters to the rally. We're done being quarantined. We're done having our freedoms taken, said Dorr. It's time to open up America. Across the country, Dorr and his older brothers, Chris and Aaron, have long opposed Republican legislators for not being conservative enough on issues ranging from guns to abortion. Their detractors say they spread disinformation to sow confusion among voters. You guys, these are hardcore. These are the hardcore crazy right, you guys. Based on publicly available tax documents, the Doors' efforts in Minnesota, Iowa, and Ohio have raised more than $2.9 million since 2013, with at least a third of it going to a direct mail printing company in Iowa owned by the Dorr family. Now, the trio is using their pro-gun social media platforms to call for anti-quarantine protests in Minnesota, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Iowa, and New York. Just as President Trump, you remember, earlier this week, commanded some governors on Twitter to, quote, liberate states with stay-at-home orders. So we got some very extreme folks on the gun rights issue, anti-abortion, hyper-conservative. Yeah, these are Charlottesville types. These are militia types. These are severe right-wing fascist types. And they're playing a role in this as well. So when we're talking about that 10%, that dangerous 10%, this is part of the equation. This is a multi-headed beast here. It's a coalition. It's a coalition of little suburban Karens thinking they're just having some little fun with their naive little protest, really maybe not understanding who their alliance is with here. It's kind of a who's who on the far right. The people who originally got the Tea Party going, which started in a very similar way many years ago, kind of sincere, down with the cause dummies, being used as dupes and props for larger organizations. Like, Midwest Freedom Enterprise is one of them. Iowa Gun Owners. The usual suspects. Freedom Works, the Koch brothers. Huge mailing lists, lots of power, lots of money, websites, disinformation campaigns, dirty tricks, YouTube channels. They got this thing going. That whole underbelly of white nationalist, ultra-conservative neo-fascists. They are loving this, and they are part of it. So yeah, media, do not both sides this. No. So yeah, we got a coalition. We got a coalition of the stupid, the evil, and the really, really evil. Not to end the week on such a downer here, but I really felt the need. I'm not happy with the coverage I'm seeing. And I don't think people quite understand what's going on. And I think way too many people are fooled into that whole both sides thing. Oh, well, one side thinks this and the other side thinks that. But let's repeat one last time. Huge numbers are in favor of being careful and of listening to the scientists. So let's hold those numbers and let's not allow that tiny sliver to infect the greater body here. This episode of The Log is available right now wherever you find your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, iHeart, YouTube, and the podcast source. Enter Charles Burcell Presents in the search window. Or best yet, go to charlesburcell.com. There you'll find this and all the other series in the podcast family. Follow, comment, and contact me on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks to our flagship terrestrial station, River West Radio, riverwestradio.com. Theme music composed and performed by Peter Donalds. From the New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee, I'm Charles Burcell.